HMS King George V, Britain's flawed avenger. At 08:47 hours on May 27, 1941, Admiral Sir John Cronin Tovey stands on the compass platform of HMS King George V. Through his binoculars, he observes Bismarck wallowing in heavy seas 2,600 meters ahead. The German battleship, disabled by torpedo damage the previous evening, circles slowly to starboard, unable to steer. Her main armament remains functional. Her crew remains at battle stations. She is wounded but dangerous. Tovey orders commence firing. At 08:47 hours and 30 seconds, King George V's forward turrets train onto target. Turret A, mounting two 356mm guns in a Mark II twin mounting, elevates to maximum range. Turret B, mounting four 356mm guns in a Mark III quadruple mounting, does likewise. Each gun weighs approximately 80 tons. Each shell weighs 721 kilograms. Muzzle velocity, 732 meters per second. Maximum range at 40-degree elevation, 36,465 meters. The first salvo fires at 08:48 hours. 10 shells arc through gray morning sky. Time of flight at this range, 48 seconds. Tovey watches through binoculars as geysers erupt around Bismarck. No hits. The range is excessive. King George V alters course to close. HMS Rodney, operating 2,000 meters to port, opens fire simultaneously. Her 9 16-inch guns, mounted in 3 triple turrets forward, deliver heavier broadside than King George V. But Rodney is old, slow. Designed in 1922, King George V represents modernity. She was commissioned October 11, 1940. Her engines produce 125,000 shaft horsepower. Her maximum speed, 28.5 knots. Her armor belt, 373 millimeters maximum thickness. Her displacement at deep load, 42,245 long tons. She is the most modern battleship in the Royal Navy. She mounts unique quadruple 14-inch turrets that no other navy uses. She incorporates lessons from 2 decades of peacetime development. She represents Britain's attempt to build the perfect treaty battleship, designed within Washington naval treaty limitations, optimized for fleet action, balanced between firepower, protection, and speed. But as the range closes to Bismarck, as King George V's guns begin their work, the ship's fundamental flaw reveals itself. The complex quadruple turrets, crammed with intricate safety interlocks designed to prevent cordite fires, begin jamming. Guns misfire. Loading mechanisms fail. The weapons that should dominate this battle become unreliable precisely when reliability matters most. Understanding King George V requires understanding the treaty system that created her. The Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 limited battleship displacement to 35,000 tons standard. The London Naval Treaty of 1930 extended these limitations. When Japan denounced the treaty system in 1934, other nations faced choices: build larger ships unconstrained by treaties, or maintain treaty compliance, hoping diplomatic pressure would preserve limitations. Britain chose compliance. First Lord of the Admiralty, Sir Bolton Ayres-Monsell believed maintaining the 14-inch gun limit would convince other nations to observe similar restraints. If Britain demonstrated commitment to arms limitation, perhaps others would follow. This position, driven by economic constraints and diplomatic optimism, determined King George V's design. Design work began 1935. The Director of Naval Construction, Sir Stanley Goodall, received specifications for a 35,000-ton battleship mounting 12 14-inch guns in 3 quadruple turrets. This configuration, matching American designs then under development, maximized firepower within treaty limits. 12 guns firing 721-kilogram shells delivered heavier broadside than 9 15-inch guns firing 879-kilogram shells. But weight calculations revealed problems. 3 quadruple turrets mounting 14-inch guns, plus adequate armor protection, plus machinery for 28-knot speed, exceeded 35,000 tons. Something required sacrifice. The Admiralty examined options. Reduce armor, unacceptable. Enemy 15 or 16-inch shells would penetrate vital spaces. Reduce speed, also unacceptable. Fleet actions required speed to maintain favorable positions. Reduce armament. Perhaps the final decision replaced 1 quadruple turret with a twin mounting 10 guns instead of 12. 2 quadruple turrets and 1 twin. This configuration saved approximately 250 tons. allowing adequate armor within treaty displacement. The savings came entirely from eliminating 2 guns and reducing one turret's weight from 1,582 tons to 915 tons. Winston Churchill, then a member of Parliament not yet returned to government, objected strenuously. He argued in correspondence that Britain should build 9 16-inch guns in triple turrets, matching the firepower other nations would certainly adopt once treaty limitations collapsed. His arguments went unheeded. The Admiralty committed to 14-inch weapons, placed orders for turrets and guns, began construction. The first ship, HMS King George V, received orders July 29, 1936. Vickers Armstrong laid her keel at their Walker Naval Yard in Newcastle upon Tyne, January 1, 1937. Construction proceeded rapidly. The hull took shape through 1937 and 1938. The unusual turret configuration, 2 quadruple mountings forward with a twin mounting between them, created distinctive silhouette. The superstructure, rising amidships, carried modern fire control directors and radar equipment. 4 propeller shafts extended from Parsons geared turbines developing 125,000 shaft horsepower. King George VI launched the ship February 21, 1939. His Majesty, following tradition, broke a bottle of wine across the bow. The king requested the ship bear his father's name rather than his own. HMS King George V slid down the ways into the Tyne, displacing 38,031 tons standard, 42,237 tons deep load. Length overall, 745 feet. Beam, 103 feet. Draft, 29 feet 9 inches. Fitting out consumed 18 months. Workers installed the main armament. The quadruple turrets, designated Mark III mountings, represented unprecedented complexity. Each turret housed 4 guns in 2 pairs, separated by thin walls but sharing common working chambers. Flash-tight doors isolated different zones. The loading system involved multiple hoists, rammers, breech mechanisms, all interconnected through elaborate safety interlocks. These interlocks, designed by Vickers Armstrong engineers at Elswick Works, attempted to prevent cordite fires like those that destroyed British battlecruisers at Jutland in 1916. At Jutland, German shells penetrated turrets and ignited propellant charges. Flames flashed through ammunition hoists into magazines. 3 battlecruisers, HMS Invincible, HMS Queen Mary, and HMS Indefatigable, exploded and sank within minutes. Over 3,000 men died. The King George V-class turrets incorporated lessons learned. Multiple flash-tight barriers, automatic doors that closed before charges entered working chambers, interlocks preventing breach opening if safety conditions weren't met. The systems, brilliant in concept, proved troublesome in practice. Insufficient clearances between moving parts, slightly distorted linkages, sensors that misread positions, all combined to create frequent jams. Testing during 1940 revealed these problems. Guns failed to fire. Loading mechanisms stuck. Entire turrets dropped out of action for minutes while crew cleared jams. The Admiralty ordered modifications. Engineers adjusted linkages, increased clearances, modified interlock sensors. The problems improved but never fully resolved. HMS King George V commissioned October 11th, 1940. Captain Wilfred Rainsford Patterson assumed command. The ship joined Home Fleet at Scapa Flow, undergoing further training and system debugging. By December, she served as fleet flagship. Admiral Tovey transferred his flag from HMS Nelson, the older battleship that had served since commissioning in 1927. Tovey, 56 years old, veteran of Jutland where he commanded destroyer HMS Onslow, understood battleship capabilities intimately. He recognized King George V's strengths and weaknesses, the powerful main battery when functioning properly, the excellent armor protection, the modern fire control systems, but also the temperamental turrets, the inadequate anti-aircraft armament, the disappointing fuel endurance that limited operational radius. Through early 1941, King George V conducted exercises, convoy escorts, patrols. The crew drilled constantly. Gunnery practice revealed continuing turret problems, but also demonstrated the ship's hitting power when systems functioned correctly. The Fire Control Table, designated Admiralty Fire Control Table Mark IX, processed range, bearing, target course, and wind data to produce firing solutions. Radar, the new Type 284 gunnery set, tracked targets beyond visual range. Combined with the Fire Control Table, King George V could engage targets accurately at maximum range, but radar and fire control proved useless when turrets jammed. May 18th. Minaditruftyon. Intelligence reports indicate German battleship Bismarck and heavy cruiser Prince Eugen have departed Norwegian waters, heading for the Atlantic. Their mission? Commerce raiding. Attacking convoys carrying supplies from America to Britain, Tovey orders all available forces to sea. The threat posed by Bismarck cannot be overstated. The German battleship displaces 50,600 tons fully loaded. Her 8 380mm guns fire 800-kilogram shells to ranges exceeding 36,000 meters. Her armor belt reaches 320mm thickness. Her maximum speed, 31 knots. She can outrun most Allied warships and outgun those fast enough to catch her. The Royal Navy deploys every available capital ship, HMS Prince of Wales. King George V's sister ship commissioned just 3 months earlier, sails with HMS Hood to intercept in the Denmark Strait. Tovey follows with King George V, maintaining position to cover other possible breakout routes. HMS repulse positions farther south. HMS Rodney, escorting a convoy, receives orders to join the chase. May 24th. 5 hours. Hood and Prince of Wales engage Bismarck and Prince Eugen in the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland. Range, 12.5 miles. Hood opens fire first, followed by Prince of Wales. The German ships return fire 3 minutes later. At 0600 hours, Bismarck's fifth salvo strikes Hood. A 15-inch shell penetrates the battlecruiser's deck, plunges through multiple compartments, detonates in or near an aft magazine. The magazine explodes. A fireball erupts from Hood's center section. The ship breaks in half. Both sections sink within 3 minutes. Of 1,418 crew, 3 survive. Prince of Wales continues the action alone. But her quadruple turrets, identical to those aboard King George V, malfunction catastrophically. E turret, the aft quadruple mounting, suffers complete mechanical failure. All 4 guns cease functioning. A turret, the forward twin mount, has 1 gun jammed. B turret, the forward quadruple mount, has 1 gun offline. Prince of Wales enters battle with 10 guns. Within minutes, she fights with 5. Captain John Catterall Leach, commanding Prince of Wales, faces impossible odds. Bismarck and Prince Eugen concentrate fire. German shells strike the bridge, killing everyone except Leach and 1 other. More hits damage the ship. With 5 guns operational and enemy shells arriving regularly, Leach breaks off at 0613 hours, withdraws under smokescreen, disengages. The action lasts 21 minutes. Bismarck absorbs 3 14-inch hits from Prince of Wales. 1 penetrates a fuel tank forward, causing slow flooding and oil contamination. This damage proves critical but is not immediately apparent. King George V, steaming at maximum speed from Scapa Flow, remains 300 to 400 miles away when Hood sinks. Too far to intercept, too far to support. Tovey receives reports of the action with growing fury. The Royal Navy's most famous ship destroyed, the newest battleship driven off damaged, and Bismarck proceeding into the Atlantic. Mission uninterrupted. But Bismarck's fuel contamination forces decision. Admiral Günther Lütjens, commanding the German squadron from Bismarck, separates Prince Eugen to continue raiding independently. Bismarck will proceed to Brest for repairs, then return to operations. This decision, driven by damage Prince of Wales inflicted, changes the strategic situation. Bismarck is no longer breaking out into open ocean. She is making for port. Her course is predictable. She can be intercepted. May 24th through 26th. British forces converge. King George V maintains pursuit, guided by reports from shadowing cruisers HMS Suffolk and HMS Norfolk. Aircraft from HMS Victorious attack Bismarck with torpedoes. May 24th evening. 1 hit amidships causes no significant damage. May 25th. Contact with Bismarck is lost. The German battleship alters course, evades shadowers, disappears into North Atlantic vastness. For 24 hours, Tovey steams blindly. He knows Bismarck's general heading, toward France, but the Atlantic is vast. Fuel becomes critical. King George V, designed for shorter-range operations, consumes fuel rapidly at high speed. Tovey calculates he has perhaps 24 hours before he must turn back. After that, fuel exhaustion will force return to base. Bismarck will escape. May 26th, 10:30 hours. A Catalina flying boat, piloted by Ensign Leonard Smith of the United States Navy, serving with RAF Coastal Command, spots Bismarck 550 miles west of Brest. The position confirms the German battleship is running for France. Force H, steaming north from Gibraltar under Vice Admiral James Somerville, lies within striking range. Tovey's forces can intercept if they maintain course and speed. That evening, at 20:47 hours, 15 Fairey Swordfish biplane torpedo bombers from HMS Ark Royal attack Bismarck in deteriorating weather, operating in heavy seas, poor visibility, and gathering darkness. The obsolete biplanes press their attack. 2 torpedoes strike. One hits amidships, causing minor damage. The second strikes aft, jamming Bismarck's rudders 15 degrees to port. The battleship, unable to steer, begins circling uncontrollably. Maximum speed drops to 7 knots. This hit, achieved by a biplane carrying a single torpedo, dooms Bismarck. Unable to maneuver, unable to maintain speed, the battleship cannot escape. Dawn will bring King George V and Rodney. The German ship, immobilized, faces inevitable destruction. Through the night, British destroyers harass Bismarck with torpedo attacks. The Germans repel these with anti-aircraft and secondary battery fire. No further damage occurs, but the attacks prevent repairs to the steering gear, exhaust Bismarck's crew, demoralize sailors who know dawn brings annihilation. May 27th. Wait for 3 hours. King George V and Rodney sight Bismarck. The German battleship wallows in heavy seas, barely making headway, circling to starboard, helpless, but her main battery trains on the approaching British ships. Her fire control systems function. Her magazines hold hundreds of shells. Wounded, doomed, Bismarck remains deadly. At 08:47 hours, Tovey orders open fire. King George V and Rodney engage at 25,000 yards. The British ships approach from northwest, taking station to prevent Bismarck escaping toward France. Rodney fires first. Her 9 16-inch guns deliver devastating salvos. King George V follows seconds later. The first salvos miss. The range is extreme. Sea state poor. Spotting fall of shot proves difficult. But as range closes, accuracy improves. At 09:02 hours, Rodney scores the first hit. A 16-inch shell strikes Bismarck's forward superstructure, destroying fire control equipment. More hits follow. King George V's 14-inch shells strike repeatedly. Bismarck's A turret, forward, suffers direct hit at 09:02 hours. The turret jams. Guns depressed to maximum angle. Inoperable. By 09:09 hours, all of Bismarck's main armament has fallen silent. Her turrets damaged. Fire control systems destroyed. Hydraulic systems wrecked. She can no longer fight back, but she remains afloat. Her armor, 320 millimeters on the belt, resists shell penetration. British shells detonate against armor plate, causing massive surface damage but few fatal internal hits. King George V closes range steadily. At 09:12 hours, range has decreased to 12,000 yards. The 5.25-inch secondary armament opens fire. 16 guns and 8 twin turrets engage at rapid rate. The secondary battery, designed for anti-aircraft work, functions as surface weapons at this close range. High explosive shells rake Bismarck's superstructure, destroy exposed equipment, kill exposed crew. Then King George V's main battery begins malfunctioning. At 09:27 hours, 30 minutes into the engagement, the first jam occurs. A turret, the forward twin mounting, has both guns drop out for 3 salvos. Loading mechanism jammed. Crew clear it. The guns return to service. B turret, the forward quadruple, suffers interlock failure. 2 guns miss 1 salvo. E turret, the aft quadruple, experiences ammunition feed jam. 3 guns out for 17 minutes. 17 salvos missed while crew frantically worked to clear the jam. Throughout the engagement, every gun in King George V's main battery misses at least 1 salvo due to mechanical problems. Some miss multiple salvos. The complex loading systems, the intricate safety interlocks, the cramped turret layouts, all contribute to malfunctions. Under combat stress, with crews exhausted, with ship pitching in heavy seas, the turrets cannot maintain designed rate of fire, but even with malfunctions, the sheer volume of fire overwhelms Bismarck. King George V fires 339 14-inch shells during the engagement. Rodney fires 380 16-inch shells, plus hundreds of smaller caliber rounds from secondary batteries. The German battleship, immobilized, absorbs punishment that no ship can survive. Her upper works disintegrate. Fires rage throughout the superstructure. Casualties mount into hundreds. By 10:15 hours, Bismarck is a burning wreck. She lists heavily to port. Fires pour smoke from multiple locations. She has stopped returning fire. Her crew abandons positions. Men jump overboard, preferring drowning to burning. Tovey, running low on fuel after hours at high speed, disengages. He orders HMS Dorsetshire to finish Bismarck with torpedoes. Dorsetshire closes, fires 3 torpedoes. 2 hit. At 10:39 hours, Bismarck rolls over and sinks. Of 2,206 crew, 110 survive. Most die from hypothermia in cold Atlantic waters. Rescue efforts terminate when U-boat alarm forces British ships to withdraw. King George V turns for home. She has expended most of her 14-inch ammunition. Her main battery turrets, stressed by sustained firing, require maintenance. Barrels show wear. Loading mechanisms need adjustment. The ship arrives Scapa Flow May 29th, 2 days after the battle. Post-battle analysis reveals troubling realities. King George V fired steadily for 32 minutes. During that period, her 10 guns should have fired approximately 80 salvos, 800 individual rounds. Actual rounds fired, 339. Less than half the theoretical maximum. Multiple guns missed multiple salvos throughout the engagement. The quadruple turrets, cramped and complex, proved difficult to operate under sustained combat conditions. Vickers Armstrong engineers examine the turrets. They identify multiple problems. The safety interlocks, designed with minimal clearances, bind when linkages deform slightly under thermal expansion. The loading systems, attempting to serve 4 guns from shared working chambers, create bottlenecks. When one gun jams, adjacent guns cannot fire until the jam clears. The bridge flash tubes, protecting ammunition hoists from cordite fires, sometimes fail to close completely, triggering safety interlocks that prevent firing. Through summer 1941, all King George V class battleships undergo turret modifications. Engineers increase clearances, strengthen linkages, modify sensors, adjust interlock logic. The changes improve reliability, but cannot eliminate fundamental design compromises. Quadruple turrets, particularly with 14-inch guns, remain inherently complex and prone to problems under combat stress. The Bismarck engagement demonstrates another weakness. The 5.25-inch secondary armament, designed primarily for anti-aircraft defense, proves inadequate for surface actions. Maximum elevation, 70 degrees. Training and elevation speed, 8 degrees per second for training, 20 degrees per second for elevation. Excellent for engaging aircraft, but the mountings, designed for anti-aircraft work, prove slow and cumbersome against surface targets. The guns themselves, firing 36-kilogram shells at rate of 7 to 8 rounds per minute, deliver insufficient weight of fire. Crews struggle with the heavy shells, loading them manually into breeches. The ammunition, semi-fixed with separate propellant cartridges and projectiles, requires careful handling. Designed rate of fire, 10 to 12 rounds per minute. Actual sustained rate, 7 to 8 rounds per minute. Below design specifications, barely adequate for defense, insufficient for aggressive surface actions. By contrast, Rodney's secondary armament of 12 6-inch guns, designed specifically for surface targets, delivers heavier shells at faster rates. These older weapons, mounted in twin turrets, prove more effective against Bismarck's superstructure than King George V's modern dual-purpose guns. But King George V also demonstrates strengths. Her armor protection performs excellently. Bismarck's return fire, though limited by damage to fire control systems, includes several near misses. Splinters strike the hull. No penetrations occur. The 14.7-inch main belt armor, 5 to 6-inch deck armor, 12.75-inch turret armor, all prove adequate. The fire control systems, when functioning, deliver accurate ranging and fall of shot data. The Type 284 radar tracks Bismarck throughout the engagement despite smoke, spray, and poor visibility. The Admiralty Fire Control Table processes data rapidly, updating firing solutions as range and bearing change. When turrets function properly, hits occur regularly. Speed proves adequate. King George V maintains 27 knots during much of the chase despite heavy seas and fuel concerns. This matches or exceeds most German and Italian capital ships. While not matching the 33 knots of battlecruisers like HMS Renown, 27 knots suffices for fleet actions. But fuel endurance disappoints. King George V's designed range, 14,400 nautical miles at 10 knots, 4,000 nautical miles at 25 knots. Actual fuel consumption, particularly at high speeds and heavy seas, exceeds design specifications significantly. During the Bismarck chase, Tovey faces constant fuel concerns. By May 27th morning, King George V has barely sufficient fuel for the action and returned to base. Extended pursuit would have required refueling at sea, capabilities then limited. Following the Bismarck action, King George V returns to operational patrols. She escorts convoys to Malta. She operates off Norway, seeking German warships. On May 1st, 1942, in heavy fog, she collides with destroyer HMS Punjabi. The destroyer, cut in two, sinks immediately with heavy loss of life. King George V suffers damage to her bow, requiring 2 months' repair at Gladstone Dock, Liverpool. Through 1943, King George V operates in the Mediterranean, supporting Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. She bombards Levanzo Island and Trapani Port. She escorts surrendered Italian battleships to Malta. Her 14-inch guns fire on shore targets, demonstrating the continued relevance of battleships in amphibious operations. 1945 brings deployment to the Pacific. King George V joins the British Pacific Fleet as flagship for Rear Admiral Sir Bernard Rawlings. She operates with American fast carrier task forces, providing anti-aircraft defense and shore bombardment support. On July 29, 1945, she bombards Hamamatsu on the Japanese home island of Honshu, range to target, 20,075 yards. She fires 265 14-inch shells, 7 hit the target. This proves the last time King George V fires her main armament in anger. September 2, 1945. The formal Japanese surrender occurs aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. King George V provides chairs for the signing ceremony. This small contribution symbolizes British participation in Pacific victory, achieved primarily through American industrial and military power. Post-war, King George V serves briefly as Home Fleet flagship. By 1949, the Royal Navy, drastically reduced by economic constraints, places her in reserve. She sits at Gareloch, mothballed alongside sisters HMS Anson and HMS Duke of York. April 1957. The Admiralty approves scrapping the class. The ships, less than 20 years old, have become obsolete. Aircraft carriers dominate naval warfare. Guided missiles threaten surface ships. Battleships consume resources without providing capability justifying their cost. December 17, 1957. HMS King George V is removed from the Navy list. Arnott Young and Company purchases her for breaking at Dalmuir. The hull is later towed to Troon for final demolition. The ship that led the hunt for Bismarck, that bombarded Sicily and Japan, that served as Home Fleet flagship, becomes razor blades and rebar. Today, no King George V class battleship survives. All 5 were scrapped between 1957 and 1960. A few artifacts remain in museums. The bell from HMS Prince of Wales, recovered from her wreck in the South China Sea, sits at the National Museum of the Royal Navy. The ship's compass from HMS Duke of York resides in the Imperial War Museum. These fragments represent all that remains of Britain's last fleet of modern battleships. Naval historians debate the King George V class endlessly. Some argue the ships represented optimal treaty design, balancing firepower, protection, and speed within 35,000-ton limitations. Others contend the 14-inch gun was a mistake, that Britain should have matched other nations' 16-inch weapons regardless of treaty considerations. The debate continues because both positions have merit. The 14-inch gun, firing 721-kilogram shells, delivered less energy per shot than 16-inch guns firing 1,000-kilogram shells. In the Bismarck engagement, King George V's shells caused extensive damage, but struggled to penetrate heavy armor at ranges exceeding 12,000 yards. Rodney's 16-inch shells, heavier and faster, achieved better penetration. Had King George V mounted 9 16-inch guns in triple turrets instead of 10 14-inch guns in quadruple and twin turrets, she might have ended the Bismarck action more quickly with less ammunition expenditure. But 16-inch guns would have required heavier turrets, stronger barbettes, modified magazines. The ship would have exceeded 35,000 tons by significant margin. Britain, committed to treaty compliance, would have faced diplomatic embarrassment. The Washington and London treaties, intended to prevent naval arms races, would have collapsed even earlier than they did. The quadruple turrets remain the design's most controversial aspect. No other navy adopted quadruple 14-inch mountings. The French Navy built quadruple 13.2-inch turrets for Dunkirk and Richelieu classes, encountering similar reliability problems. The American Navy developed quadruple 14-inch turrets for proposed battleships, then abandoned them in favor of triple 16-inch when treaty limitations collapsed. The quadruple mounting, cramped and complex, proved inferior to triple mountings in reliability and sustainability. King George V's designers knew this. They chose quadruple turrets because 12 guns seemed necessary to match other nations' firepower, and only quadruple turrets allowed 12 guns within weight limits. When weight calculations forced reduction to 10 guns, retaining 2 quadruple turrets made sense because tooling and production already existed. Switching to triple turrets would have delayed construction by months or years. Time pressure drove multiple design compromises. Britain needed modern battleships quickly. Germany was rebuilding its navy. Japan had denounced treaty limitations. Italy was constructing new capital ships. Britain could not afford delays. The King George V class entered service with known deficiencies because perfect designs would have arrived too late. The Bismarck engagement, King George V's defining moment, revealed these compromises starkly. The turret malfunctions, embarrassing but not catastrophic, demonstrated the price of complex designs rushed into production. The inadequate secondary armament showed the limits of dual-purpose weapons. The fuel consumption revealed optimistic engineering assumptions. Yet King George V accomplished her mission. She engaged Bismarck. She contributed significantly to the German battleship's destruction. She avenged HMS Hood. She demonstrated that British battleships, though flawed, remained capable of fleet action. This mattered enormously for national morale in 1941. When Britain stood alone against Germany, Admiral Tovey, reflecting on the action years later, wrote, "The King George V class were good ships with significant flaws. The 14-inch gun was adequate but inferior to 16-inch weapons. The quadruple turrets were unreliable. The secondary armament was disappointing. But in May 1941, King George V was what we had, and she was sufficient. We destroyed Bismarck. That was what mattered." His assessment captures essential truth. King George V was not the best battleship of World War II. The American Iowa class, mounting 9 16-inch guns, achieving 33 knots, displacing 58,000 tons, represented superior design. The Japanese Yamato, mounting 9 18-inch guns behind armor exceeding 400 millimeters thickness, possessed unmatched firepower and protection. Even the German Bismarck, before her destruction, demonstrated better balanced design. But King George V existed. She served throughout the war. She participated in major actions from Norway to Japan. She fulfilled her design purpose, providing Britain with modern capital ships capable of fleet actions within resource constraints Britain faced. Perfect designs remained theoretical. King George V was real. On May 27, 1941, when Admiral Tovey stood on her bridge and watched Bismarck sink beneath gray Atlantic waters, none of the theoretical perfect battleships existed. King George V existed. Her flawed turrets fired despite jamming. Her 14-inch guns, inadequate by theoretical standards, proved adequate for this action. Her fuel capacity, barely sufficient, lasted long enough. The Royal Navy, in its darkest hour, needed ships that fought. King George V fought. The complex quadruple turrets, the inadequate secondary battery, the disappointing endurance, all these flaws mattered less than the fundamental capability to bring Bismarck to action and participate in her destruction. This capability, delivered by a flawed ship built under impossible constraints, proved sufficient. That is King George V's legacy. Not perfection, not optimal design, but adequacy when adequacy mattered most. In warfare, adequacy often exceeds perfection that arrives too late or costs too much. The battleship with unique quadruple 14-inch turrets rushed into service with known problems, served throughout history's largest war, and accomplished every mission assigned. Sometimes that is enough.